If you want a man to always think about calling you, the first thing to understand is that people naturally return to experiences that make them feel good. This is one of the most powerful principles in human psychology. We seek out people, places, and activities that create positive emotions, and we gradually distance ourselves from things that feel stressful, draining, or unpleasant. The same principle applies to communication. If talking to you consistently leaves him feeling happier, more relaxed, more understood, or more energized, he will begin looking forward to those conversations. And when someone looks forward to talking to you, reaching out becomes natural. Many people make the mistake of believing that constant communication creates attachment. In reality, quality matters far more than quantity. 100 forgettable conversations cannot compete with a few meaningful ones. What makes someone want to call is not simply how often you speak. It is how they feel when they speak with you. Think about the people in your own life. There are certain individuals whose calls make you smile before you even answer. There are others whose names appear on your screen and instantly make you feel excited to talk. That reaction isn't random. It develops because previous interactions created positive emotional experiences. The mind begins associating that person with comfort, enjoyment, and emotional reward. A man who genuinely enjoys talking to you starts building the same association. He knows that when he calls, he will be heard. He knows that the conversation will be enjoyable. He knows that he can relax, laugh, share ideas, or simply enjoy your company. Over time, these positive expectations become powerful motivations to reconnect. One of the best ways to create this effect is by being genuinely present during conversations. Too often, people focus on what they want to say next instead of truly listening. But meaningful communication isn't about waiting for your turn to speak. It's about making the other person feel valued. When a man feels that you're interested in his thoughts, experiences, and opinions, he naturally enjoys talking to you more. Curiosity also plays an important role. Instead of turning every conversation toward yourself, show sincere interest in his world. Ask thoughtful questions. Listen to the details. Remember things he tells you. Follow up on topics that matter to him. These simple actions communicate something powerful. What matters to you matters to me. And few things create stronger emotional connections than feeling understood. Another important factor is emotional energy. Every interaction leaves an emotional impression. Some people leave others feeling exhausted, criticized, or overwhelmed. Others leave people feeling encouraged, appreciated, and uplifted. If your conversations consistently bring positive energy into his life, he will naturally want more of them. This doesn't mean pretending to be happy all the time or hiding your authentic feelings. Genuine relationships require honesty, but it does mean being mindful of the overall emotional atmosphere you create. People are drawn toward those who bring peace, warmth, and positivity into their lives. As these experiences accumulate, something interesting begins to happen. Calling you no longer feels like a task. It no longer feels like an obligation. Instead, it becomes something he genuinely looks forward to. Your conversations become a bright spot in his day. Hearing your voice becomes something associated with comfort and connection, and that's the secret many people miss. The goal is not to convince someone to call you. The goal is to create conversations so meaningful that they want to call you. Because when someone consistently feels better after talking to you, reaching out stops being an effort and starts becoming a desire. The second step to making him always want to call you may sound surprising at first because it goes against what many people instinctively do when they like someone. The natural temptation is to be available all the time, to answer every message immediately, to always pick up the phone on the first ring, to constantly initiate conversations whenever communication slows down. While these actions may come from genuine interest, they can sometimes remove one of the most powerful forces in attraction: anticipation. Human psychology places a high value on things that require effort, patience, and appreciation. When something is constantly available without limits, people often stop noticing its value. Not because they are bad people, but because familiarity can reduce awareness. This is why healthy boundaries are so important in any relationship. Boundaries are not about creating distance. They are about preserving respect for your time, your energy, and your individuality. A woman who has her own life, her own goals, and her own priorities naturally creates a different dynamic. She enjoys the connection, but she doesn't abandon herself for it. She doesn't sit around waiting for the phone to ring. She doesn't put her entire day on hold hoping for a message. Instead, she continues building a life that makes her happy and fulfilled. Ironically, this independence often makes her more attractive. Why? Because confidence is attractive. Purpose is attractive. A person who values their own time communicates something important without ever saying a word. They communicate that their life is meaningful. And when people see that value, they are more likely to respect it. This doesn't mean playing games or intentionally ignoring someone to create jealousy. Healthy attraction is not built on manipulation. The goal is not to make him anxious or confused. The goal is simply to avoid making yourself so available that he never has an opportunity to miss you, appreciate you, or make an effort himself. Think about it this way. If you are always the one initiating contact, always starting conversations, and always maintaining the connection, he never has the chance to step forward. He never has the opportunity to wonder what you're doing, how your day is going, or when he'll hear from you again. In many cases, people become more invested when they are allowed to participate in creating the connection. Psychologists often refer to this as the principle of investment. The more effort people contribute to something, the more valuable it tends to become in their minds. When a man chooses to call, chooses to reach out, and chooses to invest his time and attention, he becomes more emotionally connected to the relationship. Another important factor is anticipation. Anticipation creates emotional energy. It creates excitement. It creates curiosity. If every conversation is instantly available at any moment, there is little room for anticipation to develop. But when both people maintain healthy lives and healthy schedules, communication begins to feel more meaningful. You may notice that the conversations themselves improve as well. Instead of speaking out of habit, you're speaking because you genuinely want to connect. The interaction feels intentional rather than automatic. There is more appreciation, more interest, and more value in the time you spend together. The strongest relationships are built between two complete individuals, not between one person constantly chasing and another constantly receiving. Mutual effort creates balance. Mutual investment creates respect. And mutual respect creates lasting attraction. When a man knows that your attention is valuable, your time is meaningful, and your life is full even without constant communication, he becomes more likely to take initiative. Not because he is being pressured to do so, but because he genuinely wants to be part of the life you've created. And when you stop making yourself available every second, you give him the opportunity to become the one who wants to hear your voice first. One of the most effective psychological principles for creating stronger connection is understanding that people often remember how an interaction ended more vividly than how it began. This idea influences everything from friendships and relationships to business meetings and life experiences. When it comes to communication, the final emotional impression you leave behind can have a powerful impact on whether someone wants to reconnect with you. That is why the third step is learning how to leave every conversation on a positive emotional high. Many people unintentionally make the mistake of stretching conversations far beyond their natural ending point. At first, the interaction is exciting, engaging, and full of energy. Both people are laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. But instead of ending while that positive feeling is strong, the conversation continues until it becomes repetitive, tired, or forced. What could have ended as a memorable interaction slowly loses its momentum. Psychologically, this matters more than most people realize. Human beings naturally associate emotions with experiences. If a conversation consistently ends when both people are feeling good, the brain stores a positive emotional memory connected to that interaction. As a result, the person becomes more likely to want another conversation in the future because they associate talking to you with positive feelings. Think about your favorite movie. Imagine if it continued for another 2 unnecessary hours, after the story had already reached its perfect ending. The overall experience would likely feel weaker. The same principle applies to conversations. Sometimes ending at the right moment creates more impact than continuing indefinitely. This doesn't mean abruptly ending every call or making yourself seem unavailable. It means recognizing when the conversation is naturally flowing well and allowing it to end while the emotional energy is still positive. When a man hangs up the phone smiling, laughing, or feeling connected, that feeling often stays with him long after the conversation is over. Another reason this works is because it creates emotional momentum. Momentum is the feeling that there is still something to look forward to. When conversations always stop at the perfect point, there remains a small sense of anticipation. He leaves wanting a little more rather than feeling completely exhausted by the interaction. This emotional curiosity becomes one of the reasons he thinks about calling again. You may have noticed this principle in everyday life. Some of the best conversations you've ever had probably ended with the thought, "I could have talked for another hour." That feeling isn't negative. In fact, it's often a sign that the interaction was meaningful. The experience leaves you looking forward to the next opportunity to reconnect. Positive emotional endings also create stronger memories. People tend to remember moments that made them feel appreciated, understood, inspired, or happy. If your conversations consistently end with warmth and positivity, those emotional memories begin accumulating over time. Eventually, he doesn't just remember what you talked about. He remembers how good it felt to talk to you. This is especially important because attraction is rarely built through logic alone. Emotions play a major role in human connection. A man may forget specific details of a conversation, but he will often remember the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. He will remember feeling relaxed. He will remember laughing. He will remember feeling understood, and those memories influence future behavior. Over time, something powerful begins to happen. Calling you becomes associated with positive experiences. He starts expecting enjoyable conversations before they even happen. Your voice becomes linked to good feelings. The interaction becomes something he anticipates, rather than something he simply responds to. The goal is not to make him miss you through absence. The goal is to leave him with such a positive emotional impression that reconnecting feels naturally appealing. Because when every conversation ends on a high note, the desire for the next one begins before the current one is even over. And when someone consistently walks away from your conversations feeling better than they did before, they'll often find themselves looking for reasons to call again. One of the most common mistakes people make when they want someone to call more often is that they unintentionally take responsibility for the entire connection themselves. They send the first message every time. They start every conversation. They make every plan. They check in constantly. They carry the emotional weight of keeping the relationship alive. At first, this may seem helpful because it keeps communication flowing, but over time it can create an unhealthy imbalance. That is why the fourth step is learning how to give him space to invest in the connection. Human psychology works in a fascinating way. People tend to place greater value on things they have personally invested time, effort, and energy into. This principle appears throughout life. We value projects we worked hard to complete. We appreciate achievements we struggled to earn. We protect relationships we actively help build. The same idea applies to attraction and communication. When a man is always receiving effort but rarely contributing his own, he misses an important part of the bonding process. He never experiences the satisfaction of pursuing, initiating, or creating connection. The relationship becomes something that simply happens rather than something he actively helps build. Think about what happens when someone is always available to solve every problem before you even notice it exists. Eventually, you stop recognizing how much work they're doing. Not because you don't care, but because the effort becomes invisible. The same thing can happen in relationships. If you're constantly carrying the communication, he may never fully appreciate the value of what you're contributing because he never has the opportunity to participate equally. Giving him space to invest doesn't mean becoming distant or cold. It doesn't mean withholding affection or playing games. It simply means allowing room for mutual effort. Instead of feeling responsible for every interaction, you allow him opportunities to reach out. You allow him opportunities to call. You allow him opportunities to demonstrate his own interest. This shift can feel uncomfortable for many people because it requires patience. When communication slows down, the temptation is often to immediately fill the silence. But sometimes silence serves a purpose. It creates space for the other person to step forward. It allows them to make choices rather than simply responding to yours. Psychologists often discuss the concept of emotional investment. The more someone contributes to a relationship, the more connected they tend to feel. Every phone call he initiates, every conversation he starts, and every effort he makes becomes part of his personal investment in the connection. Over time, those investments strengthen emotional attachment, because he is actively participating rather than passively receiving. Another benefit of this approach is that it creates clarity. When both people have opportunities to contribute, you gain a more accurate understanding of the relationship. You no longer have to wonder whether the connection exists only because you're constantly maintaining it. His actions begin providing answers. His willingness to call, reach out, and invest becomes visible. Healthy relationships thrive on reciprocity. They are not built by one person doing all the work while the other simply enjoys the results. They grow because both individuals contribute their time, attention, and effort. Both people choose to show up. Both people choose to stay connected. You may also notice that conversations feel more meaningful when they originate from genuine desire rather than routine. A phone call that happens because he wanted to hear your voice carries a different emotional energy than one that happens simply because you always initiate. The interaction feels more intentional, more balanced, and more authentic. The strongest connections are not created by chasing. They are created by participation. They are built when two people actively choose each other, rather than one person constantly carrying the entire relationship forward. And when you give a man the opportunity to invest in the connection, you give him the opportunity to become emotionally attached to something he helped create. If you truly want a man to keep calling you, one of the most powerful things you can do is create an environment where he feels understood rather than controlled. This may sound simple, but it touches one of the deepest psychological needs every human being has. People naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel accepted, respected, and emotionally safe. They naturally avoid situations where they feel judged, pressured, or constantly criticized. That is why the fifth step is not about demanding more communication. It is about becoming someone he genuinely enjoys communicating with. Many people believe that if they want more attention, they need to ask for it repeatedly. If they want more calls, they need to complain about the lack of calls. If they want more effort, they need to point out every moment when effort seems missing. While honest communication is important, constant pressure often creates the opposite effect. Instead of making someone feel closer, it can make them feel as though every conversation comes with expectations they are afraid of failing to meet. Think about your own experiences. Who do you feel most comfortable talking to? Usually, it is not the person who constantly criticizes every mistake. It is not the person who makes every interaction feel like a performance review. It is the person who listens, understands, and allows you to be yourself. Emotional comfort creates openness. Openness creates connection, and connection creates the desire to stay in touch. When a man feels understood, communication stops feeling like an obligation. He no longer calls because he feels he has to. He calls because he wants to. There is a significant difference between those two motivations. One comes from pressure. The other comes from genuine desire. Psychologically, people are more likely to share their thoughts, feelings, and experiences when they believe they will be received with understanding rather than judgment. This is why emotional safety is such an important part of attraction. If every conversation becomes an opportunity to criticize, interrogate, or control, communication begins to feel stressful. But if conversations become a place where he feels heard and appreciated, they become something he looks forward to. This does not mean agreeing with everything he says or never expressing your own needs. Healthy relationships require honesty and mutual respect. What it does mean is approaching conversations with curiosity rather than assumption. Instead of immediately focusing on what is wrong, focus on understanding what is happening. Instead of reacting from frustration, try responding from awareness. You may notice that people naturally open up more when they feel accepted. They talk longer, they share deeper thoughts, they become more authentic. The same thing happens here. A man who feels emotionally safe is often more willing to communicate because he knows the interaction will leave him feeling understood rather than exhausted. Another important aspect of this principle is appreciation. Everyone wants to feel valued. When people feel that their efforts are noticed, they become more motivated to continue making them. A simple expression of gratitude can often create more positive change than repeated complaints ever could. When he does call, appreciate the effort. When he shares something meaningful, acknowledge it. Positive reinforcement often encourages behavior far more effectively than criticism. Over time, these interactions begin creating a powerful emotional association. He starts connecting conversations with you to feelings of comfort, understanding, and acceptance. He knows that when he reaches out, he will not be entering a stressful situation. He will be entering a space where he can be himself. And that emotional experience becomes incredibly valuable. In a world filled with pressure, expectations, and constant demands, being around someone who genuinely understands you feels rare. It feels refreshing. It feels meaningful. Because when a man feels that talking to you brings him peace instead of pressure, picking up the phone stops feeling like a responsibility and starts feeling like one of the best parts of his day. The final step is perhaps the most important of all because it goes beyond getting a phone call. It goes beyond communication habits, texting patterns, or who reaches out first. The real goal is not to make a man call you out of routine. The real goal is to become someone whose presence he genuinely wants in his life. When that happens, calling becomes a natural result rather than something that needs to be encouraged. This is why the sixth step is becoming a positive part of his future vision. Human beings are constantly imagining the future, whether they realize it or not. We think about upcoming plans, future goals, potential experiences, and the people we want beside us as we move through life. When someone becomes emotionally important, they begin appearing in those mental pictures. We start imagining conversations with them, sharing experiences with them, and including them in plans that haven't even happened yet. This is where true emotional attachment begins to reveal itself. A man who consistently thinks about you, values your perspective, and enjoys your company will naturally begin connecting you to positive future experiences. He doesn't just enjoy talking to you today. He starts wanting you to be part of tomorrow as well. Think about the people who have had the greatest impact on your life. Chances are they weren't simply entertaining or attractive. They added something meaningful to your world. Perhaps they encouraged you during difficult moments. Perhaps they made you laugh when you needed it most. Perhaps they supported your goals, believed in your potential, or helped you become a better version of yourself. Their value extended beyond the moment. The same principle applies here. If you want to become someone he consistently wants to call, focus on becoming someone who adds value to his life in a genuine and positive way, not through perfection, not through endless sacrifice, and certainly not through pretending to be someone you're not. Real value comes from authenticity. When a man associates you with encouragement, support, understanding, and positive energy, your presence begins occupying a special place in his mind. He starts viewing you as someone who contributes to his happiness rather than someone who merely occupies his time. And that distinction changes everything. Psychologically, people become attached to those who consistently enhance their emotional well-being. If conversations with you leave him feeling inspired, calmer, more confident, or more understood, those feelings become linked to your presence. Over time, he begins seeking that experience naturally because it enriches his life. This doesn't mean your role is to solve all of his problems or carry all of his emotional burdens. Healthy relationships are partnerships, not rescue missions. The goal is simply to create an atmosphere where both people feel stronger, happier, and more supported because of the connection they share. You may notice that as this bond develops, communication becomes more effortless. He doesn't call because he feels obligated. He calls because sharing his day with you feels natural. He wants your opinion. He wants to tell you about something exciting. He wants to hear your voice after a challenging day. These desires emerge organically because you've become part of his emotional world. Another important factor is consistency. Future vision is not built through one impressive conversation or one memorable moment. It is built through repeated experiences over time. Trust grows through consistency. Emotional attachment grows through consistency. The desire to keep someone in your life grows through consistency. As he continues experiencing your presence as a source of positivity, encouragement, and genuine connection, his perspective begins to shift. You're no longer just someone he talks to occasionally. You're someone he enjoys having in his life. You're someone he looks forward to hearing from. You're someone he naturally wants to keep close. And when a man begins seeing you as a meaningful part of the future he wants to create, calling you is no longer something he remembers to do. It becomes something he genuinely wants to do because life simply feels better when you're part of it.